back. Welcome to another weekly episode where we sit down and we just... I'm not one of those dog owners that likes... My dog licks my face, please be guided. Anyway, my name's Miriam and it's great to have you back on my channel. Last week I had my sister on and she interviewed me in a Get Ready With Me... not Get Ready With Me, what am I talking about? Get to Know Me video. This week we're going to be a bit more personal, and I just really wanted to talk about where God is leading me and what I've been going through this year. I feel like I'm on the bullet train and it's just going 300 miles an hour and so much is happening and I'm literally just holding on, and they're all good things, so it's good, but it's just a lot is happening and quickly, so it's a lot to take in, a lot to digest. And it really started in January of this year. So at the start of the year 2023, corporately the word was that this was a year of 10 times greater, and I just really felt in my spirit as well that this was not just for my church and on a corporate level, but also on an individual level as well. And God was really saying that, no, this year is the year of 10 times greater. And I really had a sense, in my church I'm a small group leader, and I really had this strong sense that I really wanted to tell all the girls in my small group, like, look guys, God is gonna do so much for us as a church and on an individual level this year, that at the end of the year it's gonna be like, God did this and God did this and then this happened and this happened and this happened. And not that that will lead to people becoming envious, but I guess I just sensed on my heart that if like people who don't engage or really tap in and really lean into where God is taking us will feel almost a bit left behind. So that's how the year started. And very early on in the year, the first or second week of January, the word God gave me was kairos. And it's so funny because, again, that's something he spoke to me on an individual level, but it's a word that has cropped up again a few times over the last few months at a corporate level. And there was even one sermon on it in church, which I will link below. But kairos is a Greek word for time, and it really speaks of divine time, or a moment in time being the opportune time for God's favour. And really at the start of the year, God was really saying, like, this is your year of 10 times greater, this is your year of opportune favour, like this is the year you're going to see answered prayer, the things you've been praying for a long time, in this season of waiting that you've been in, waiting for a husband and for other things that you're waiting for, like this is the year that you're going to see real shift and real progress in those areas. And then he was even saying not just that, but also on a global level and holistically in my life, it's going to be 10 times greater in all areas. And it's funny because when I got that word, I was like, okay, God, that's cool. But in May last year, so May 2022, you said to me, you gave me a word that now was the time, and it was go time, and now it's specific about me to my husband getting married. The word I got was, it's showtime, like it's go, like now is the time. But here we are in January, and we're 7-8 months down the line, and the situation looks exactly the same. And I said to him, and I said, look, when I say go, when I mean go, it means that like there is movement. If I say something is happening now and the time is now for something to happen, then it happens immediately. And God, I know your ways are not our ways. I know you're above time and space. So, and I know that one day is like 1,000 and 1,000 days is like one in your timing, in your sight. So maybe I'm just being too literal with my understanding of time, or maybe I've misinterpreted what you were trying to say to me. And I really took that to God, and he then countered and came back and said, actually no, I'm not a man that I should lie, I'm not the son of man, I don't change my mind. If I've said something, I'll do it. My word cannot return to me void. So if I've said it, by the time it comes back to me, it has to be done. And I'm telling you, I said that, I haven't changed. And what he showed me, and especially what I've been learning over the last few months, is that he said that was the word and the time is now. But along with that, if I'm saying go is an action word, which means yes, I'll move and I go ahead of you, but you also have to move and walk towards where you want to go. So I said go to you 8 months ago, and you sat still, but you need to come. So he's essentially saying, like, my inactivity was why I hadn't really seen any progress. So then I was just like, okay, so you're saying go, walk forward, that's cool, but what does that actually look like practically? Does that look like going on dating apps? Because I've never really felt in my spirit that that's where those were ever for me. I've tried them in the past, they haven't really worked, I've never really taken to them. And that's not even from a place of pride, that's just a place of just never really feeling that God had told me to go on them, or that was something that was for me, or how I would meet my person. I'm not closed off to it, but yeah, there was always just something about it anytime I go on it, and they can always be quite disheartening when you go on them and then you don't really get anywhere, and they would often make me feel a lot worse. So it was I always found I'd have them for like a week or two and then delete, and that's both Christian ones, non-Christian ones. Like, I found my experience with them to be the same across the board. So I was like, well, is that what you're saying? Are you saying like I need to like start actively going to events and like doing things with the sole purpose of trying to position myself to meet people? Because that's just not also what I'm like. Like, certainly I can go with my eyes open to places I'll go, but to go just to like to church hop or to go to other places just specifically to look for people, I don't know that that's necessarily what you're telling me to do. And then he really, over the last few months, so he was just like, look, let me tell you a story about the children of Israel. And they had a promise. So Abraham got the promise, he got the promise of the land, he got promise of the seed. So every person under his lineage was a child of promise, was an heir to that promise. And when they were about to go to Jericho, with Moses, they sent 12 spies, 2 with Joshua and Caleb and 10 with others. And Joshua and Caleb came back with a good report, the 10 came back with a bad report. And the people, although they would have been told time and time again of what God done, how he parted the Red Sea, how he did all this and got them where they were, fed them with manna, gave them quail, like met their every need, gave them water when they needed water, was really their Jireh, they decided to believe the bad report instead of the good report, and the good report based on knowing God's character and what he'd done in the past. And because of that, because of their doubt, because of their unbelief, that led to a 40-year delay in them entering the promise. And it's just, it made me say, okay, so God's promise didn't change. He said what he'd said to Abraham, and that never changed. But because they didn't have faith, because there was unbelief, that delayed them in them entering. And God was saying sort of a similar thing, like, you need to walk in faith. Faith moves the hand of God, faith moves my hand, but also on the converse, on the flip side to that, doubt and unbelief can cause a delay in the promise, and the devil knows that. And so he'll often throw everything at you to get you to doubt, to get you not to believe what I've said, to get you discouraged, because he knows that causes a delay and you lay hold of the promise. And when you lay hold of promise, you'll be walking in kingdom purpose, and the devil doesn't want that. So I was just like, wow, okay. And then really all throughout February, he was just reminding me of all the promises that over the last 5-6 years that he's spoken over my life, and saying, look, I said this, I've said this, I've said I'm going to give you a hope in the future, I've said that I'm going to do exceeding abundantly far more than you can ask or imagine, I've said that I'm going to restore all the years the locusts have eaten, I've like all these things, I've said I'm going to make rivers in the desert and roads in the wilderness. And he just kept on really reminding me of all these things that he'd spoken over my life that I'd just written down in journals and forgotten about. And he said, that's all true and that's all going to happen, but you need to claim it, you need to believe it, and now you need to move to walk in faith. And in March, so March was just a season of him really building my faith and really understanding faith in a new level, faith as an action, faith as something that does, that believes, that when you know that you know that you know that what God has said over your life is going to happen. And when you have that heart knowledge, you move differently. So you move as if you've received what's been promised. And really he, again, that, like I said, March was a journey to that, and then that led into April with him being like, okay, so I've reminded you of everything I've promised you over your life. He's built really my faith in a new way of him just helping me to just see that I already have it. Even just from the start of the year, he's been teaching me about supernatural and the natural realm, and how it's so important to take hold of the promise in the supernatural. and lay hold of it in the supernatural, fight in the supernatural to get the promise, to win the battle, so that then the natural is just a mirror of the supernatural. So once you have it in the supernatural, the natural will fall, and I need to lay hold of myself as a wife and a mother in the supernatural. And then in the natural realm, like, those things will just happen like that, because it just falls into place in alignment with what God has done in this, what has been won in the supernatural. So I was just like, wow. And like I said, it was like a 3-4 month build up to really get my understanding to that place. And then in April, he was like, right, so now we walk forward and we are obedient. And then I was like, okay. And he'd really, the way I say it, it makes it sound like, okay, just obey these things. But he'd really built up my faith to the point where it's just like, you can't tell me otherwise. And I think even one of my friends yesterday was saying that as I was speaking, I was like saying all these things, and she was just like, you just said like, oh yeah, you and your husband are going to do this thing. But I don't know who the guy was, but he'll just be thinking like, you and your husband, like, are you married? But the way you've changed is different. But that's also because the way I see myself is different, because now I just see like what God has promised, it's done. So you just move differently. And in April, there were certain things that for the first time I was just like, okay, God, I know this is what I am. Just guide my steps, like tell me what to do, like step by step, tell me what to do, because I don't want to mess up. I just want to follow you like wholeheartedly and just follow your lead. So just tell me what that looks like practically. And it wasn't go on dating apps or go here, go there to meet a person. It was other things, like he told me to go to like specific events, and it wasn't until I got there that I would see that, oh, the reason that I was supposed to go there wasn't to meet someone, it's because he's trying to teach me something or trying to show me something that would be useful for me in the future. And there's other things, like for example the wedding I went to the other day I got invited to, I was just like, oh, maybe God, like maybe I'll meet someone here. And then he was just like, no, actually there's lessons that you need to learn in terms of when it comes to planning your own wedding, in terms of things like AV, so audio visual, and running of the day and organisation. And it's just like random things like that I was like, okay, noted. But even with and the thing is, it's so easy to just think as well that this is just about, oh, a specific promise about God leading me into kingdom marriage. But what I realised is, so like I said, April was a month of obedience, and it started with April the 1st. He told me to go to a place which was like a show, and I wasn't really sure why I went there, and I was just like, it looks weird that I'm here by myself. But I went and then realised that, okay, he's trying to teach me something specific. And then that really made me realise that, okay, anytime God is telling me to go somewhere, just be obedient. It may not make sense. It may seem crazy in the natural that I'm like going to certain events, but let me just go and trust that God is who has foreknowledge and is walking me down this path, is being deliberate and intentional, and that I need to be here. And honestly, I've not found once that I've obeyed and been like, God, this was a complete waste of time. Like, everything I've been obedient to has somehow made sense, or I know will make sense in the future. And one of the things was that on the 2nd of April, it was baptism service at church, and then all of a sudden at the end, like, God just really gave me an urge of, no, you need to get baptised again. And it's never anything I thought I needed to do. I was baptised when I was 17. The method of baptism was correct, so it was Father, Son, Holy Spirit, full immersion. So I never thought that I needed to do it again, but what he showed me is that there was a lot of external pressures on me when I got baptised, and so ultimately I did it was transactional. I did it so I could go on holiday with my friends, and that would keep my mum happy before I went to uni. And he really said that, yes, although it's the right method, you need to do it again, because I didn't actually become Christian, or I didn't receive the Lord as my personal saviour until I was 26, so that was 9 years after that. And so in the 9 years between being baptised and then being saved, I was just, because I grew up in church, but I was just living however I wanted and doing whatever. And so then it got to this point on the 2nd of April, on the Sunday, where God was like, look, just make this declaration that Jesus is your Saviour, just between you and me, and then at least you know for yourself that you've got that assurance that you've been baptised, then it's completely untainted, it's not flawed, it's just been a decision that you've made independent of other motives. And yeah, so I was obedient to it, and then even within that, as I went and like got changed and then stood up, I bumped into my cousin, and my cousin had also at the last minute been like, yeah, I need to get baptised. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And he was just like, yeah, I was just sitting there thinking, I don't know if I've ever been baptised. And then I just felt the urge to just ask and see if I could. And they said I could get baptised. And he is very shy and introverted, so it's not like him at all. And then he asked me, are you nervous? And I was like, oh no, I'm not nervous. I'm actually just a bit like in shock, because as God was speaking, like it was all happening so quickly, and then I kind of all just like walked through it, and then something was changed and about to get baptized, so I was just a bit like spaced out from shock. And he was just like, oh, I was really, really nervous, and I was just praying to God to like help take away my nerves. And then that's when you came over and I saw you, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, and now I'm not nervous at all. So even within that, me just being obedient to God was an answered prayer for someone else. Which is why it's always so important to be obedient to God, because you don't know the bigger picture of what God is doing, and also how God uses you to help other people. But yeah, so then I got baptised, and then later that day there was prayer meeting in church, which I went to, and then a similar thing. I was just there, and then I saw one of the pastors who runs a program called Keys, which is an 8-week course by Mercy UK, but it's 8 weeks of Keys to Freedom. And I'd always thought that it was for people who really struggled with mental health, depression, anxiety, and that affected their day-to-day to the point where they couldn't continue. But then all of a sudden, I saw her, and it was during the prayer meeting, and God was literally saying to me, look, I know you don't think it's for you, I know you don't have anything that crippled you, and a lot of the traumas that you've experienced as a child, and a lot of the adverse childhood events, they don't stop you functioning, you're still able to do your job. And God was saying, like, do this program, like, although it's not something you feel like you need to do, it's about getting your keys to freedom. And what's the worst that could happen? The worst that you spend 8 Tuesdays of your life, a couple hours of the day a couple hours in the evening doing this program, and you find out actually that the things you used to struggle with, or the things that held you back, that led to certain behaviours, that yes, you may no longer do those behaviours, but on one case you may do it and you may find that yes, you don't do the behaviours, and it's because the roots have been dealt with and that you're free, and that's all great. Or you could do it and realise that although a lot of the behaviours that you've surrendered to God and you don't do naturally, because God has come in and healed and taken them away, so there's literally no desire to do that, and that's been a transformative process since she was saved 6 years ago. But you may do it and find that there's still things that you need to deal with, and there's perhaps you don't do the behaviours, but the root is still there, and the mindset deep down is still there, and that needs to be dealt with, and you need to do it now. And so I approached this pastor and I was like, hi, can I do keys? And she's just like, oh, initially she said, oh, no, sorry, it's full. And then she said, but actually we may be able to make a space for you. I'll let you know. And then by the time I got home, she sent me a voice message. Cody, get down. She sent me a voice message to say, actually, Miriam, that's not what I thought you were going to ask, but yes, we could squeeze you into keys. But you need to attend all 8. And then I looked at my diary and I realised that I was actually planning to go on like a 2-week solo trip in May, which would have affected like 2 of the weeks. So then I said, okay, let me just think about it and I'll let you know tomorrow. And honestly, it's like from your lips to God's ears. I slept on it, I prayed about it, and because she told me that there was another course in October. And so when I said, oh, let me think about it, I was fully thinking like, okay, I'll just sign up for the one in October, it's fine. They've already done an introductory meet where most of the group have met each other. So like I can do it in October, like I won't change my mind, and I'm sure she'll hold me accountable. And then I prayed about it and God was like, no, you need to do it now. You need to do it now from where I'm walking you to, because you need to walk in wholeness, and you need to be whole and have dealt with certain things by June. And that was the first time I realised that actually where God was taking me was just not about specifically about kingdom marriage. It was about me being whole as a person. So I realised that He was leading me down this path and said, I want you to be free from things that are holding you back emotionally, so that come mid-June, end of June, you're ready to walk into the next level or the next stage of your life. Same with my finances. I just got a certain desire in my heart to just be a better financial steward. And that was something that, I mean, I'm never, because I don't run out of money at the end of the month, because I'm single and I live alone, I very much was just like, oh yeah, if I want something, I'll get it. But actually, I could be a better steward of my finances, and then with the money that I just went spend on waste on other things that I can't really give account for month to month, I could be using that to help people, to be more generous, to sow into the kingdom. And that's something that suddenly became more of a desire. And along with that is I was due to remortgage, and God was really saying, pick this particular product. And that would have meant that my mortgage repayments would have quadrupled. So initially I was just like, yeah, okay. And then initially I didn't. I did something else. And then I went back and I said to my mortgage advisor, look, actually, can I go for this one, the one that God had told me to do? And then he'd misunderstood and was just like, oh, actually, let Santander have a new product, so you don't even need to remortgage. So it's fine. Like, you can just do a tracker for 2 years and switch and whatever. And I knew that's not what God told me to do, but I was just like, yeah, okay, fine, just because it was more hassle. But then, again, literally a couple of weeks ago in the middle of April, God just kept putting that in my heart. And I kept on being like, okay, I need to message him, the mortgage advisor. And then when I finally got around to messaging him, I was like, look, actually, I know it's probably too late, but can I just switch and do this different type of mortgage that I initially wanted to do? And he messaged straight back, and he was just like, oh, perfect timing. I'm free in 2 hours at 1. We can jump on a phone call. And then we jumped on the phone call, and he was like, yeah, we can do it. It may take 8 weeks, because it takes 8 weeks for the product sometimes to come around, but we'll get started as soon as possible. And it may just be that you spend a month paying a higher fixed rate until your new product comes through, but it's completely doable. And he said, look, I was about to go on holiday on Friday for 10 days, so you caught me at such a good time, because had it been 10 days, like, it wouldn't have been possible. 10 days later, it wouldn't have been possible. And I was just like, wow, God, I love how he just puts on your spirit and prompts and pushes and pushes and pushes until you're just like, right, no, I need to be obedient. And this is actually something he told me in March, so there was plenty of time at the point. There's plenty of time for me to do it at the time, but I just thought like, oh, it's probably something I want to do, and I hadn't realised that actually it was a product or something that God wanted me to do. And I was just like, look, let me just do it. And what God said is, worst case scenario, you can rent out your house if you want. You won't lose any money. Like, yeah, it just means you won't make profit off renting your property, but you're not. You can always. How do you know that you're going to even be living in this place come July? You could be living with your parents. You could be living somewhere else. You don't know. And you need to do this now. Again, for where I'm walking you to, for where I want you to be in July, you need to do this now. And then he reminded me of when I even bought this place 2 years ago. I was supposed to complete on the 1st of April, but then there was a random delay that no one could explain. That solicitors couldn't explain it, my mortgage advisor couldn't, their other side solicitors couldn't really, like, all the searches had come through, but there was just a 2-month delay. And God really said, like, that 2-month delay that seemed random isn't random, that's intentional, because it all builds up into where I'm walking you for this summer. And I was like, wow, okay, like, God is literally the God of the fine detail. And I was just like, and he was just like, also then he said, like, you're also forgetting that I can raise up people to sow into you, like, where you feel like you've got a shortage, or where you feel that your monthly mortgage repayments are going to stop you from being able to pay for other things, to save for other things, such as like like maternity leave or wedding, or like feeding your eggs, like all these different things that people are saving for that I hadn't really, I guess, accounted that I'd need to save for. He was saying, you may not even need to save for that, because you how do you know that I won't raise people up to sow into you to cover that shortfall, so you won't even feel it? Just trust me, I know what I'm doing. And so I trusted. I went with a new product, and I felt peace about it. And honestly, I'm not anxious, and I'm sure when I when it does come through in June or whatever. And I know he'd said, sorry, skipping back, that he'd said it may take 8 weeks, and I'd have to pay the standard variable. And I just thought, I'm just not going to have to do that, because I know God, and He's going to bring things through supernaturally. And He said, do this. I know that in being obedient to it, He's going to do all the hard work and make it happen. So yeah, financially, that's where He's teaching me, like, and you need to be a certain place in June. Even spiritually, there were certain things that I just felt like I wasn't spiritually mature enough to do. One of them is I don't like praying out loud for people, but I didn't think I was good at praying out loud for people, because I never, literally, I can be talking now, but the minute someone says Miriam, pray, my mind just goes blank, completely blank. And through someone in church, God raised up an opportunity for them to tell me to, like, pray over a specific group. And because of the person who it was, that's why I said, okay, I'll do it, because she's got quite a discerning spirit. So when she asked me, I was just like, well, God, I know that if she's asking me, that means that you're telling her to ask me. So I prayed over it, and she gave me 2 weeks notice, thank God. But I prayed over it, and I was like, God, if you want me to pray, then you will give me what you want me to say and how that looks. Because she didn't give me any brief. She didn't want to influence. She just said, go, pray about it, and then whatever God gives you, share. And so there were no parameters. I didn't even know if I had to bring bullet points or what to pray about. I just knew that it was for the young people. And God was really faithful, and He gave me a word, and He was like, this isn't just for the young people, it's for everyone. Like, you're seen by God, you're heard by God. And the day we had the prayer meeting, so that was April the 15th, from the start I knew that, like, wow, God is good, because the first person who even said something or prayed, said something about, if you don't feel, it doesn't matter if you don't feel like you've got the gift of prayer, the ability, like, God can use anyone. And that was even just God speaking directly to me. And the whole morning was full of different women praying for different things. Even there was a bit of a message as well. And how it all tied in together was just so beautiful. And there'd been no conferring, because the lady had given the same message to me as to other people, that whatever God puts on your heart to share. And there was just this running theme of being seen by God, being heard by God, God really using us, and that we should rise up as women, and as women of what that God has called us. And it was just beautiful, and it was just a reminder to me that God was saying that He can use anything, and there's nothing that's impossible with Him, and everything we do is with His Holy Spirit within us. And He really stretched me to just step into that. And so again, in that area, He's saying, okay, just continue to lean on me, don't trust in your understanding, but trust in me. I will use you, like, as a vessel. And so He's stretching me spiritually, and just teaching me lots of things about His nature, His goodness, His kindness, and just faith and hope, and just trust again. And that, again, He was saying, so we need to, there's some of these basic concepts or these false mindsets, that beliefs that you have on yourself of what you can and can't do as a Christian, that we need to cut off before the summer. And so I slowly realised that it dawned on me that what God is trying to do is emotionally, spiritually, financially, and also physically, because He was then telling me since the start of April, He was just like, no, you need to get back into the gym, you need to start lifting weights, you need to. And I was like, God, I've been keeping in shape, I've been keeping fit. I had taken a bit of hiatus from the gym, because I'd done like an 8-week program that I tend to do from time to time. But I just got this really strong sense of God saying, you need to get back into the gym, and you need to do this like now, so that in July, June, 2 months time, you need to be in a different position. And I was just like, okay, fine, I'm going to do Keys now. Keys is 8 weeks. This program is 8 weeks. It's a 60-day gym program of weight training. I'll just start that again, and I'll start it the same week, so it finishes at the same time. And I felt God was being like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm happy with that, because these things, again, need to be done for a certain time. So in June, July, like, it needs to be finished in June, because where you're going to be at the end of June, July is going to be a complete different space. And so literally in every area of my life, God has been like, no, okay, we need to work on this, and we need to do this now, so that you go from A, because you need to get here, you need to be here by this point, so that in this next season of your life, whatever that looks like, all those things, all those mindsets, all those things that you've thought, okay, you can leave to marriage, or you can leave it later. Like, they need to be dealt with now and done now. And then what I realised over the last week or last 2 weeks is that the concept of the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So Psalm 23:1, I shall not want. And what God was trying to say is that actually he showed me that he's trying to make me a whole person, so whole and complete in every area. And I guess I realised that deep down there were certain things that I didn't think I needed to really address or sort out, because I just thought, oh, I'll sort that out when I'm married, or like when I'm married I'll be a better steward because we'll be sharing finances with someone, so we'll be able to keep each other more disciplined, or when I married this, when I married that. And God was saying, like, no, you're putting your trust in man to complete you, whereas your wholeness comes from me, you're complete in me, and I'm trying to get you to that place where you're whole and complete in me, and not just feeling whole and complete, but knowing deep down that you are. Because it's nice in theory to say, oh yeah, I don't want because God, the Lord is my shepherd, but actually, is that the reality? Like, deep down, is that your heart posture? Is that your full understanding that Jesus is the one that completes me? Like, no man can complete me, no man can affirm me, like when I'm whole and when I'm complete in Christ. And when I know that, the level of what I accept and the level of what I expect changes as well. And I was just like, wow, God, you're so kind, because you're actually just taking time to like do this personal. He's got me on like a continual personal development program. That's like a 2-month accelerator, but it's just so kind. And I realised that, yeah, God, I actually want that. I don't want to just say, oh, I shall not want, but not mean it. I want it to be like the reality of my life, to be complete, to be whole in God, that no one can, because no one can do that, because all that will happen is if you go into marriage incomplete, it's a mirror, so that incompleteness, that void will just be amplified, whereas he's leading me and taking me down a path where, for whatever the next season of my life looks like, whether it's marriage, whether it's something else, either way, he's got me on this journey that I will be in a place where I can say I'm complete in Christ, and it's only God that makes me whole. And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. I'm excited, and although it feels like I said, like I'm on the bullet train, for the first time I can see what God is doing. It's almost like the dots of my life that I thought were just random events, they're now joining up, and I'm now starting to see a bigger picture of what God is doing. And actually, I'm just like, God is so kind. And I just can't wait to see how the next few weeks, months, the rest of the year unfolds. It's May the 1st today, and there's so much more of the year left. Like, we're only 1 quarter, 1 month into the year, and already God has brought me light years ahead. So I just know that this year of 10 times greater is still 10 times greater, and there's so much more to come. So yeah, anyway, I will leave it there. I hope you have a good day. I will see you next week for more gist.